How's it going? Wow, really enjoying this. Lots of dubby stuff going on. Really loving the space echo. Yeah, the boing. I mentioned in the previous video, wasn't feeling the boing, but do you know what? There's a bit of a boing there. I'm kind of, I mean, that's boingy enough, right? Yeah, really liking it. I'm also liking this thing, right? The way the saturation works, as I mentioned before, like you can just kind of push into it and you can kind of control how crazy it gets, and it just gets this like nice kind of clean, or not clean, but like precise. There's a precision about it which isn't so evident in the original, the 201 that I have. But yeah, this kind of it's like a really I don't know, like a mid-high crunch. Yeah, really liking that. I kind of sat down with this setup. I got the other thing that you might hear in the background, probably not now, but like what do we got? This thing here, this. I mean, this is just a delay, right? This is the LXP-1 Lexicon. My God, right? I bought the Autobam quite a few years ago and really got it because I wanted something portable for live use, like that would kind of basically get close to the Ensoniq DP4. And the DP4, for those of you who haven't heard it, if you've heard like old sort of Consumed by Plastic Man, it's all over that record, all over that album. It's just got really sort of thick, gloopy, and complex kind of reverb, even in its short kind of tails, but when it's big and long as well, it has that too. And also sort of the delays and other effects in there really just I don't know, there's nothing else quite like it. I think it was like Ensoniq's like the cheap version of maybe some Eventide stuff back in the day. I'm not sure, forget off the top of my head, but really nice effects unit. So the Autobam has kind of really tried to kind of bring that sound into a small form factor, and I don't know, like it just wasn't doing it for me. It's a great machine. It's well overpriced, I feel, for what it is, and it just like, what is it, like nearly 500 quid or something crazy, and I just wasn't. It's kind of essentially a reverb. It's got like a basic delay kind of algorithm in there, which is a bit sort of difficult to work with, and it's got some kind of distortion and kind of high pass and low pass stuff in there. But yeah, I just don't know, like every time I put kind of any sounds through it, wanting it to do what the DP4 did, it just wouldn't do it. It the way that it sort of added reverb to clicks and basses, it just kind of, I don't know, like I like a reverb that just really takes over, so and just is in itself enjoyable to listen to, as opposed to something that's like supporting and creating space for another sound. Obviously those reverbs have those places too, but I wanted something more structural, something more integral, and typically like much louder than the main, like the dry, the main sort of source. The Autobam wasn't doing it, so I used to take the DP4, or did take the DP4 out live once, and by far my favourite live performance that's on this YouTube channel, actually, an old one, I think it's from 2018 maybe, I'm not sure, maybe a bit later, I can't remember, but had just a DP4, really had fun using it. But it's a big box, it's a 19-inch 2U deep thing, and they're expensive now and they break easily, so I've actually got two, because the first one kind of broke, or kind of partly broke, the one I took live, actually, not because of live, but, or maybe, I don't know, but yeah, Autobam wasn't doing it. Got Elasis quadriverbs and things, which I had like the MIDI Verb 4 when I was a teenager. The quadriverb was kind of like their flagship sort of an era before, so very used to the Elasis sound. Quadriverb just wipes the floor from the MIDI verb, from my memory at least, because I don't have a MIDI verb anymore. But yeah, trying to find something that was good and portable, that I could use in a live sense, that kind of emulated or to some degree supported or further expanded the palette of what I'm used to in a studio environment, but in a live situation, so I can just comfortably maneuver and create and not have to struggle. Like if the machine isn't doing what I want it to sonically, then it's just a real battle. And so yeah, really hit a wall. LXP-1. I kind of looked at it. Oh yeah, I bought an Oasis Nanoverb actually, which I thought might kind of get at the Oasis sound, and it kind of does to a degree. It is a great box. I do like it. I've also lost that to my partner. She's taken the Autobam, and the Oasis Nanoverb makes some far better use of it than I ever did. Makes it sound incredible in her mixer feedback sort of sets, like ridiculously good. But it didn't sound that good for me and what I do. Yeah, so I figured like Lexicon LXP-1, bit bigger. It's sort of like 9 by 9 inches probably. It's like a nice little cute square box. Got a good condition one, pretty cheap, like 140 quid or something, which is excuse me, which is really good because I'm not very wealthy. And it's just ridiculous. Like the effects on it, I'm really happy with, and immediately it's kind of one of those things, right? You kind of think, I'm going to buy something, and I kind of really want this sound, but do you know what? I'm going to buy this other thing because it has all the features, and I can kind of compromise, and that'll do me. And for me, if it just doesn't sound good, I'm just not going to use it. So it could be the cheapest or most expensive thing. If it doesn't sound good, I'm not going to use it. If it sounds great and it's cheap, even better. If it sounds great and it's expensive, it's a bit of a sting to have to pay that money, but it sounds a sound. So really happy with the Lexicon. It's definitely going in the live set up. It is here using a delay. The reverbs are ridiculous on it, but the delays are really interesting. So I just kind of settled on a delay. Like there's no like every single spot on that LXP-1 is a sweet spot. They all just sound amazing. Whereas the Autobam was like, algorithm 1 or 2 is kind of fine. RE-202, really getting to grips of it. Again, it just feels familiar to me. I think some friends of mine were saying about the styrofoam pedals, the tape delays, and I think it's styrofoam or I want to say polystyrene, but I think it's styrofoam, right? Or how you pronounce it. But they're probably great. But I'm just familiar with the Space Echo, so for me, this is really working. And the delay sounds good. It adds a bit of grit. Really happy. So like this sort of, again, I'm pretty sure this is not the sort of sound I'm going to play live. You never say never, but I think what I find with this kind of like track, if you can call it that, is it's kind of like I don't know, if you're whatever your genre is, there's kind of like a staple of certain sounds that I can kind of rely on, or that you could rely on within that genre, that is going to give you sort of like a foundation of which to try other equipment on. And I do that a lot in the studio. I'll make tracks that are pretty within my skill, what would be the word? Within my reach, within my abilities. Pretty comfortable doing it. So like old 90s electronica, melodic stuff. I can do that till forever. That's kind of what I grew up on. Really enjoy making that. And just kind of creating washes and also this kind of dubby, glitchy sort of stuff still feels very much my kind of ballpark. I've been sort of making that sort of stuff since before I was really even into dub music. I wouldn't say I'm massively into dub music now even. Like the electronic kind of scape records and the older clicks and cuts kind of stuff, and where the dub, bled into other things, I've obviously kind of accumulated that over time. Pole, obviously, but Bert Fryman, a few people come to name, but they're all like that scape, like sort of click, right? So, like it's not until people were sort of saying, "Oh, your stuff's really dubby," I figured, do you know what? I probably should like embrace that a bit. So, something about the sound of what you sound like versus what it sounds like is what you think you sound like versus what it actually sounds like is kind of an interesting kind of area. And but I find those are just things that I kind of just have in me, so I can just kind of play with them, and just having that comfort zone, I can explore new equipment. So you know, I know how the bass is going to behave with certain effects, and I'm looking for that quality in new equipment. So, you know, this is like a kick drum. So we got like a kick, which is a filtered, I think it's what have we got here, filtered BDFM, but I mean, you know, it could be anything because it's just filtered right down. And then the other thing is the sub, which is on the bass tom, BT Classic, just filtered down. And this snare, which is I think it's a classic snare or something, natural snare. So I've kind of found like I'm kind of getting into the drum sounds on the rhythm. I'm kind of finding like with the addition of a mixer, I'm kind of getting into them more. There's more sculptability. I can get at the sounds a bit more. And I think like I'm kind of jumping around here, I know, but I think when I got the rhythm, I was very much wanting to use it for a particular thing, and I'd like to focus on one box in isolation. And I know when I put it in the studio, it was so sort of deep in terms of like, I mean, it's not that deep, honestly, but in terms of just the menus, and you could do so much in it, I wanted it to do everything. But as soon as you put it through a mixer, it sounds pretty amazing. So snare drum, which we have muted. So it's basically really, there's a bit of filtering which I kind of recorded in, and then this is probably like the closest to the original. So kind of like trying to hit like an 808E, CR78 kind of old school white noise snare, which that snare drum natural kind of gets at. So you can kind of influence the body, like the main kind of chamber of the snare drum, and you can also influence like in the sense of the decay of it and the tune of it, and also the decay of the white noise, which is kind of like supposed to emulate the top part. So that's a real typical 808 old school electronic style emulation of acoustic drums, and I kind of like that. So but with the 202, I mean well, actually that's a little bit of delay from the Lexicon, so that's the spring, which is cool. And obviously you could put the delay up of the other one. So I've kind of got a little bit of delay from the Lexicon, and it's out of time. Well, sorry, I'm still getting over my cough here. It's out of time, which I love. Something I find difficult with the rhythm is the delays are always fixed, hence the kind of mapping it to LFOs just to kind of move it out, because it ends up, you just get these not polyrhythms, because they're obviously kind of fixed in some mathematical relationship, but very much like a loose, kind of sloppy kind of quality. It almost goes from sort of time-based repetition to texture or click or kind of crackle. Reminds me of record crackle a lot. Probably my pole upbringing, but yeah. So that's basically it, right? The other thing, I've got the Atmos chord, which I used in a previous video. I'm using it again because like I know it quite well. There's a few chords actually with the Silent Hill game that this is from, or well, there's a sample CD which the Silent Hill game samples uses in the game. It's primarily all samples, but yeah, this is just a nice kind of nice chord, and I've just kind of grabbed a little section of it, so you get this its own timing, and I was really loose with it, but I think it actually linked in reasonably well with the looping point of the track, and then I have the same chords again, but with some with two different looping points to create some stereo movement and some bit reduction. There's different settings also to create some stereo movement. So so that kind of works really well. The only difference between this one, apart from the texture and EQ settings, and this one, is this one, you've got some kind of like Jan Jelinek kind of Derek May kind of sort of pitch bending, you know, thing, which I'm a big fan of. And it's not something you immediately think of doing on this piece of equipment, but on a sampler with a control keyboard maybe, or on any sort of synthesizer sort of from sort of 80s, 90s or whatnot, you always get the pitch wheel or pitch bender and modulation wheel and these things, and they're just performative tools that are typically mapped already. So it's kind of interesting seeing music that's got these kind of particular sort of I guess like control elements in them, or particular kind of sound variations that seem quite deliberate in terms of the artist is kind of like, I want to pitch bend this, but in a lot of cases it's just because the wheel's right there. It's just like you can just reach it. With the rhythm, I think this goes to what I often mention, it's a very much a kind of machine that you have to have intentions for and then program them in. So there's a lot of pretext, and it's taken me a long time to get past that, where I feel a bit more intuitive with it, a bit more like like when you learn anything, and that you just it suddenly becomes a bit more second nature, and being aware of like habits and things. So mapping a bit of pitch to this is, for me, it's like I'm imagining the pitch wheel, pitch bend on a synthesizer or sampler or whatnot. So that's what that function serves. Really simple, but you can kind of create this sort of to and fro from one sort of sound to another. Like the track structure is like, here or here, basically. And it can kind of add some structural changes that I think you can introduce other elements, and I find that quite useful for when you're kind of jamming and you're not sure kind of how to create the structure, to not have to worry about it. You've got these like built-in cue points effectively, as opposed to just like everything fading in and doing what it needs to. But transitions, structure, like for those of us who do repetitive stuff, it can be a bit of a mindfuck. So but yeah, that's pretty much it. The only thing that which is a really important thing actually was something that I've kind of not been decided on for quite a while, and I think I've decided now, is how to use and what to use in terms of the source engines on the rhythm and the samples on the rhythm, and what outputs to run them and what channels to use them. Because the hats, the cymbals and cowbell, the sort of mid and high and the rim shot and claps all choke. So having and they choke both the synthesizer and the samples, so which is kind of crap. But it is what it is. And but you've got individual outs for them, so it's sort of like you really have to consider that when you're programming stuff. And I wanted to try to find a way that I don't really need to. I can maybe use it as a feature as and when I want to, like either more traditional kind of drum sort of closed and high open hats that cut each other out, or some creative stuff with samples. I want to be able to go to it when I want it and leave it when I don't. So that was that in mind. The other thing I had in mind was how I distribute what would be like mono sounds and what would be stereo sounds in a set. So like I find if I'm kind of jamming, having something that's like suddenly widens up the space, it doesn't have to always be there, but like having that option, creating stereo movement, and it not just be through the effects, which is what typically the rhythm wants you to do. Largely, obviously you can pan stuff, but within the limits I've got here is trying to find other ways to do that. So I figured I'm just going to put the same sample or some kind of stereo sounds for consideration on track 9 and track 11, and they have their own outputs, and I don't use 10 and 12, or maybe I could use 10 and 12 for a different sample, and then I could just stop them and start another one or something like that, or turn it down, turn the other one up or something like that. The low tom is creating another sample just because I was lazy, but it could be its own mono sound. So we've got like track 1, 2, 5 and 6 on 1, 2, 3 and 4, so they're all monos, and then we've got like left and right 9 and 11 on this strip here, and then we've got this sort of stereo mix of like the effects on this channel here. So these are like stereo channels. So like if we drop this all down and then we turn up the effects, you get like this reverb thing, which is I can't remember how I created that actually. I think it's off the snare drum from memory. Let's have a look. Yes, it is. So that's just like a snare drum, that snare drum pattern run through the effects, and then you got the reverb one, and then you can introduce the more, it's kind of lazy, but it sounds kind of, in terms of like having something dry and something wet, like I like that technique a lot. I tend to have like my sort of effects to be post fader, so I always get them the wrong way around. Sorry, pre fader. I'm looking at this and it's up and down. Yeah, so like before the fader has an influence on the effects for certain spatializing, so you can just have like this kind of thing happen. So there's no dry signal, or this kind of thing happen. I like that. And then within a dub sense, you've got like this is a bass, and there's you can hear it's not coming, and then you can not hear it because I've muted it. There we go. You can kind of have that sort of idea so that it spills over. So you could do the same thing here. Whereas on this one, like, doesn't that sound nuts, that Lexicon? Anyway, you can do that on that one. So it's kind of a bit of a flip there, but I like that. It'd be nice to have the mode pre and post for both, but it is what it is. I can make it work. My bigger mixer, which is out of shot here, is everything set to pre, mainly because you have to take the bloody thing apart and take some pieces of metal out and then put them back on a board. It's just a nightmare. So they're all set to pre. So I kind of like that because you can, it really helps with like transitioning stuff. So you can introduce like the quality of the, like a chord, for example, and then introduce the dry without it influencing the volume of that effect. So this kind of idea. So I find that really helpful with let's have a bit of bass in the background. Got a little bit of bass. Yeah, kind of like that because it helps with it just helps with transitions. It helps with it gives me a bit of time to think as well. Like during a jam, I can be like, while I know there's some transition, I've just got to concentrate enough to move my hands in a way, and then I'm thinking about like what I might be doing next. So I find those sort of practices quite useful. So it's been quite fun just revisiting jamming, because I haven't been really jamming for what seems bloody ages, because although you see the rhythm stuff like a lot, it's so specific. There's all these other skills and techniques and equipment that I find you need to practice on. Something I was watching, there's a really nice guy I was going to meet in Berlin. I didn't get the chance because I didn't go in the end, but he does a channel, Aura Music, who's seems like a super nice guy. He's got way too much nice equipment, which I'd love to use and own. But he has some sort of, he talks about his challenges of like playing live, and he just says you just got to practice. I haven't, which I totally agree. It's like with anything, but having a dedicated space that's just focused, that you can kind of keep within some parameters, keep within some limits, and just practice. And I don't think it's practicing, at least for me, it isn't practicing the actual live set, because I feel that's really I don't know, I don't like practicing the live set itself, but practicing the gear, practicing your sound, like in a more general sense, I think is really useful. Just knowing like the EQs, just knowing how the effects react, knowing like, where stuff could potentially go wrong. Like for just before I press record on this video, I hit the chords, and then I was going to have them running independently before I pressed the sequencer, and I was recording. As soon as I hit the sequencer, I noticed that the recorded steps for the chords were at a different volume. So as soon as I pressed start, it like dropped in volume. It's just stuff like that, stuff that you kind of think you just overlook them. So nice to just kind of have that practice to iron stuff out, just so you're not as caught out. But it's live, isn't it? It's always going to go bloody wrong. So, but that's part of the fun, I guess. Yeah, but I think that's it. I guess I will upload the project for this, but it is going to be pretty different because the basses have got quite a lot of EQ on them. Arguably, like whatever you're running, you could probably boost it in the filters inside. Obviously there's no effects with the exception of the the built-in one, which has kind of got this sort of deal. It's got a bit of a dub feel, even that. So but yeah, like I found this works quite well. I was jamming with different settings on the Lexicon, different reverbs. It works quite well, like having different reverbs on the bass. Maybe not this one, but this today. But having different reverbs on certain sounds and maybe taking the filters up so it's a bit more crunchy. Lots and lots of possibilities there to be a bit more glitchy versus this sort of smooth thing, and just kind of stretching it out in terms of adding sounds and whatnot. But yeah, it's probably not going to be that much useful, but maybe just the track itself is enjoyable. It's quite satisfying playing around with, but I kind of want to move on. I want to start again, and this space on the desk is being used up with this, so I thought create a video, share it, and then we'll move on from there. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I think that's the bulk of it. I'm going to do more live videos for sure, I think, and experimenting. I'm thinking maybe to do something from scratch using the Lexicon, and just hearing like something I haven't done on the video much, which I think and I haven't done much period with this box, is just working from scratch but with effects. And I feel it really changes the creative directions you take than what it would be if you're just working within the rhythm. Obviously because there's more options, but how that speeds up things and just having us having a look at what happens would be interesting. So we will see. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there, and I will see you in the next one. Nice one. Cheers.